The Minnesota Vikings have been around since 1961. And I just want them to win a damn Super Bowl before I die. Welcome to Before I Die with Jessi and Myles on Purple Daily and Score North.
That's right. We just want to win one Minnesota Vikings Super Bowl before we die. This is Season 3, Episode 1 of Before I Die, brought to you by Purple Daily and Score North. I'm Jessi Pierce, usually found at a hockey rink, hence all of the background hockey that you will see behind me. But you know what? I've been in purple pain most of my life as well. Like many of you, my first time was the Anderson missed field goal. I watched my dad, a tear run down his face, a jersey fall on the bar floor, and we were late to my basketball game. That was my first introduction to Minnesota Vikings pain. Alongside with me, as always, Ross Brendel, the producer. Ross, why do you love the Minnesota Vikings?
Well, the pain, Jessi, lets me know that I'm still alive. It's good to have that pain in our life.
It hurts. It just hurts, but you're right. It's always something. And joining us this season, we're so excited to introduce Myles Gorham. I did it already, Myles.
You did it already.
I wanted to say Gorham. I had tried to get this clear. I'm terrible at names, guys. This is going to be an ongoing thing all year. Gorham. It's not hard. It's Gorham, but I was hyper-focused on the ham part, and that's all right. It's Myles. Myles, what's up, buddy?
It's State Fair week, too, I feel like. So I feel like the ham part, like all the turkey legs, the ham, I get it. So I'm good. I'm good. I'm so excited to be here and excited to be on Before I Die because I want one before I die too. And just like you both talked about, that 98 season for me I remember crying. I cried my eyes out. I was like 8 or 9, and so that was like one of my first memories. And then my dad, I don't know if you can see it on my camera. My dad gave me stuff. There's a 96 Vikings poster right here. So like I'll hang that up at some point, but I have that 96 poster. Chris Carter is my favorite player. So
yes,
just all the heartbreak.
For those watching on YouTube, did Myles not just look like every TV weatherman you've ever seen? Slides away, starts
trying to point. Yeah.
Trying to point to get the correct.
The way that year went to, the cockiness that we had here in the state of Minnesota. We had the KWB going to Miami Jam hit.
Welcome to Miami.
So good. But RIP. But one more before we die. Maybe not this year. I'm just going to start right out the gate, right out the chute. Probably not going to happen this year, guys. We'll get into a ton of that. But as always, before we die, we will talk about Vikings. Then we're going to get to our Before I Dies. We'll eventually introduce some of the comments from YouTube, so we encourage engagement. Go ahead, chirp us for our bad takes or our great takes. There's bound to be a couple. It's a long season. We're getting ready. Countdown begins. Preseason's over, guys. Final roster cuts to be made tomorrow, 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern. Myles, let's start with you. Who's in, who's out? Who are your top guys? I think some of the areas you look at running back for me, that's the one. It's just a simple numbers game, which is unfortunate, but I think some of those are very set in stone. Who are the big names? Are there any surprise cuts that you see, Myles, coming from the Vikings laid down tomorrow?
I don't know if it's a surprise at this point, just based off how the offseason's gone. But the two names that like stick out for me are Jaquelin Roy, last year's fifth round pick, and then Dalton Risner. He's been hurt. I think they don't want to have to guarantee a lot of money. He hasn't been able to compete to start at right guard with Ed Ingram. So those are the two for me that I'm like, I guess I wouldn't be like completely surprised, but they're bigger names. There was a draft pick from last year. And then you have Dalton Risner, who started at left guard most of last year. And then they brought him back and didn't guarantee him a starting spot. And he's been hurt. So those are two names for me that I'm like, I wonder if both those guys will make the roster, just kind of what we've heard and seen.
Ross, what do you think about Dalton Risner? He was on my list too as a possible surprise cut for the exact reason you just mentioned, Myles, the injury. It's hard to move past that. Do you think Dalton still sneaks in? Because I think it's very kind of 50-50 at this point.
I think if he is cut, it'll be a surprise to a lot of people nationally just because of the name and the body of work. I think locally, for every reason that Myles laid out, I don't think it'll be a ton of surprise. He came in relatively late compared to most of the roster, and then he just hasn't played a ton. So I don't think that sets up well. Is there a chance he still makes the roster? Yeah, I'm sure there is, because obviously they are comfortable with him. They had him here last year. I kind of lean Myles' way. I think he's probably out, but also maybe he's a guy that's out, sits out a few weeks, and maybe a team like the Vikings or somebody comes back to him when they have injuries. I mean, the market for him whether it's his group or whether it's just the rest of the league, what didn't seem to be too great. That's why he ended up, I don't want to say crawling back, but why he ended up back with the Vikings at a number that I think both could be happy with. We'll see. I'm actually more interested, Jessi, in what happens at quarterback just because it's the sexy thing. Everybody always wants to talk about quarterback. If Jaren Hall makes the team, will he likely play at all this year? I don't know, probably not, but he could. We saw it last year. So I think it'll just be interesting from my standpoint to see what do the Vikings do at quarterback. Are they going to open up by carrying 3 quarterbacks, or are they going to try and sneak Jaren Hall through to the practice squad and then designate him as that emergency quarterback on game day? Interesting because he, to use a term all you kids like to say, he balled out the last few games of the preseason, right? So it's interesting to see what happens there because he did put a lot on tape and he did look comfortable with a lot of guys that probably aren't going to make NFL rosters. So I'm actually intrigued just to see what the Vikings do if they decide to carry 3 quarterbacks, because Jessi, like you said, if they carry 3 quarterbacks, well, then it becomes a numbers game because you're going to have to take a number somewhere, whether that's wide receiver, cornerback, linebacker, offensive line. You're probably going to have to trim back somewhere else. So I think I'm most intrigued by what happens with Jaren Hall.
We'll dive a little bit deeper into the quarterbacks coming up. But I look at Jaren Hall. I think you keep him. I think the Vikings know he won't get by on waivers. I think he will get grabbed by another team. I know that there's been discussion of, is he trade bait? Is he tradable? I mean, what do you even really get for a Jaren Hall? He did, quote unquote, ball out at the link last week and last preseason game. 17 for 25, 189 yards, 2 tutties in a 26-3 win versus the Eagles. But I'm leaning toward they're going to carry the 3 QBs. I think they don't want to risk losing him. That's just kind of the hyper sense I get. Myles, what do you think? Are you comfortable with them going 3 QBs there? Obviously, Darnold as your number 1, Mullins 2, and then Hall as your 3rd guy. Or do you want to see them say, see ya, Jaren, you're out?
I'm conflicted on this one. It's not that like I don't like Jaren Hall. I just think there's a cap. I think Ross, you'd mentioned it. If he played last year, we hope he doesn't have to play this year. And I think that just kind of says it a lot for me. If you're scared to play a guy at all, it's always a worry for me. And I just don't see there's not a lot of true upside with Jaren Hall. I think there's a baseline because I think there's a lot of talent. I think there's talent there. I think there's ability to run the offense, but I don't know how much of a skill set he has that can really translate to wins. I think even him being behind a Nick Mullins at this stage, it's tough. Like you would have liked. My whole thing all offseason was if JJ McCarthy was healthy, I think it's an easy decision. I think that makes that decision a lot easier. But since he's not, my thing was, well, can he beat out Nick Mullins? If he can't beat out Nick Mullins, that says a lot to me in year 2. Because we know what Nick Mullins is. There's not a lot of upside with Nick Mullins. It's just throw that ball across the yard for Nick Mullins to get as many yards and just throw that ball up to JJ because he's down there somewhere. And so with Jaren Hall, for me, it's like, well, if he can't beat out Nick Mullins in year 2 at 20, I think he's like 26 years old. He's already older. I'm not saying they shouldn't keep him. I'm not saying they can't, but I'm not like sold on, oh my God, they have to keep him. Otherwise you're like screwed. That just doesn't feel right to me. So I'm like, if they put him on waivers and try to bring him back in practice squad and they lose him, good luck to him. But I feel like you could find a replacement for him fairly easily. But I know they have investment in him. So I would totally understand if he sticks on the 53 too.
Now, this is interesting because I think in a perfect world, Myles, I think their hope was that obviously J.J. McCarthy doesn't get injured. So then he is your number 2. Right. Or maybe the first week or 2, he's technically your number 3. But if you're projecting out to the future, which I think all Vikings fans have to do at this point, like Jessi said, probably not the year that they win the Super Bowl. Stranger things have happened. I suppose it could. But for me, this year, it's all about the long game and just what does this look like as we're shaping the future. I think the hope would have been, Myles, that you end up just trading Nick Mullins for whatever you can get, whether that's like a conditional 6th round pick, maybe it's a 7th. Jaren Hall's your 3 this year. And then next year, he has 2 years in the system. He knows the offense. He's a very cheap backup, which helps you, again, save a few $1 million when you're out in free agency. But that's not going to happen now. It's a different set of circumstances with the J.J. McCarthy injury. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens there. Myles, I'll clarify one thing that I said. It's not necessarily that I would be scared to play him. I think it's most 2nd and 3rd quarterbacks. You really don't want them to play. I think in a perfect world, Sam Darnold's healthy. He's good and the Vikings win 10 plus games, and you never have to see Mullins or Jaron Hall play meaningful games at all. But just based off injuries, and now we're playing 17 games, and oh, by the way, at some point we're going to play 18 games. You got to keep your players as healthy as possible. So we'll see where it goes. I'm looking forward to 3:00 Central Time tomorrow, because there always is, not just the Vikings. There's going to be surprise names. And one thing I guess I'd throw to Myles very quickly, if you don't mind, Jessi, this team has a dearth of draft picks. What is tradable? Is there any piece tradable that they can move and maybe get some late round capital for? Could even a Dalton Reisner be tradable to the right team?
If Dalton Reisner was healthy, maybe. And I think that's the big caveat there. And obviously, I hate it now. I'm blanking on the guy that they traded 2 years ago that they brought in. They traded him to Pittsburgh for like a 2025 conditional 7th. I'm blanking on his name. I'll come back to it. But like that type of trade I could have seen. But if he's not healthy, it's hard to trade a guy that's not healthy. But any other names, I've seen people throw around basically like the 2022 class.
I was going to say Lewis Cine. Like, what about him, right? I want to talk about him, you guys, because he is first round 2022. Obviously, the lower leg injury detrimental, probably going to get cut. But is he tradable?
Is he going to get cut? He's got like $3.5 million guaranteed. Like they lose $3.5 million in cap space just to outright cut him if he doesn't get claimed. That's always the tough part too. And I feel like that's the part that like he has guaranteed money. And so it makes it not as so cut and dry. Like an Asamoah or even a Caleb Evans, if you cut them, you trade them. I could understand that. There's not a lot of money there. But Lewis Cine, there's a little bit of money. And so money always dictates a lot of decisions in the NFL, as we've seen, because there's a cap, right? So you don't want to just completely lose all that money. So if they could trade him, I'm sure they'd be willing to trade Lewis Cine for a bag of chips. No offense to Lewis Cine. That's just kind of where things have gotten. I think that 2022 class is kind of like the area I look at. The guys I just mentioned would be like the ones I'd consider trade bait.
Well, and I think somebody like Cine too, there's always going to be a general manager because he's so young, or an organization that's going to say, we still see what other teams saw. We still see what everybody saw in the draft process to make this kid a late first round pick. So let's take a flyer on him for a 6th round pick. I'll name drop Judd Zolgad, of course, also of Purple Daily. His theory has been the last couple of weeks why he's played so much is that they're showcasing him. 100%. And also you have to remember, to his credit, he is one of the more talented guys on the field the last 2 preseason games. So he should shine and he should pop comparatively to most. But to Myles' point, when you talk about a Booth Jr. or Lewis Cine, sometimes this is where the politics and the other non-football stuff comes into play. And you wish it was as cut and dry as, no, we just want the 53 best players. But I think we all know at this point in our sports fandom, it's not always that cut and dry. Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up, Jessi, because it will be interesting to see what happens with him. And also one thing to point out, the 53 that we see here in a matter of hours is probably not going to be the 53 when the Vikings take the field on September 8th. There'll be a cut or two because of an addition or two or a trade. But it is interesting to see when you get to that initial cut, the surprise names.
Yeah, I would agree too. You had talked about, no, JJ, we've talked about injuries galore, which if the Vikings could stop breaking rookie quarterbacks' knees and legs, that'd be awesome. But Ross, is there anything that you could do when particularly favorite quarterbacks are injured? Is there anybody we could call?
Maybe Nicolay Law is who you want to call, Jessi. You are just the master of the segue and the setup. Nicolay Law knows that when you or a loved one gets injured, ordinary life can come to a stop and things can get complicated. We don't want that. That's why there's the folks at Nicolay Lawn where they come in. They're just normal, everyday folks, the ones you see at the gas station, walking the dog, or at your local watering hole. Normal, everyday folks who are here to make sure you get the compensation you deserve after an accident. So if you're injured, get Minnesota's local award-winning injury lawyers. Get Nicolay. Start your path to winning at nicolaylaw.com or give them a call at 1-855-NICOLAY. That's NICOLET. And they're Vikings fans like us. Why wouldn't you want to support those guys? nicolaylaw.com, 855-NICOLAY.
I love it. I would need as many billboards as Nicolay Law has out there. One day I'm going to have that many. It's beautiful.
Do you wear the flannel, Jessi? Do you ever get the flannel on in the fall?
Oh, I'm a basic fall biatch, if you will. Let's be honest. Like I'm 100%. I'm not into the pumpkin spices, but
I
I'll
was
pull
just
up
gonna
that
ask.
flannel.
Just
Nope, I
about to
don't
ask
do
about
the
the pumpkin spice.
PSLs. Just a little plaid shirt. Maybe I have a hat that I've specifically only worn during like family photo shoots at apple orchards, and I've never wear it
Can
ever again.
can I make an admission to you two?
Of course,
I
nobody else is the
still,
same.
yeah, exactly. And maybe somebody in the comments can describe this to me. I still have a really tough time understanding the difference between flannel and plaid. Are they the same thing?
Flannel
Different
is
patterns?
generally your flannels are thicker. So I have a lot of like I use it for ice fishing because I'm outdoorsy like that. But like your flannels are tend to be very, very thick. Like think old men wear your flannels, like grumpy old men. Those are flannels. And then your plaid, you could that's just a pattern. Plaid is the pattern. Flannel is the thickness. Sometimes it's got the wool texture. I think that's about right. I'm also in
This
fashion, guys, just so you know.
this is why you lead the show, and Miles and I just along
Yeah.
with you, Jessi.
I
I
like
try.
fashion, but the plaid flannel stuff's not really for me. I'm not the country boy. Like Jessi's got that country to her. I don't.
She
That's not
does.
really me.
She does.
I dabble
Jesse
in
and
a little bit of everything.
we've seen the straw hat videos on social too with Jessi, so she can pull it off.
Totally. Absolutely. 100%. You guys, we talked a little bit about the cuts and the players that we haven't been impressed with. I want to now switch gears to obviously the positives because this show will try to keep it positive for as long as we can until the Vikings inevitably crush our souls. Jalen Naylor, phenomenal preseason. And I can't say that I'm surprised. I'm almost maybe more relieved, right? Like, okay. And I think, in fact, he's downgraded Brandon Powell in the depth chart. What do you think, Miles, about Jalen Naylor's preseason, and how excited are you to have him be that wide receiver 3 heading into the year?
Yeah, so wide receiver was a big thing that I was worried about going into training camp. Jalen Naylor was a big reason for that. He couldn't stay healthy. We saw flashes, but the health could never be there. And so it was hard to really predict what he was going to be for this team. So if he can go into week 1 healthy, we kind of don't know what's going on with Jordan Addison. But him being healthy makes the depth in that room so much better because he has that versatility to play. He can be, they call him Speedy for a reason. He's a deep threat. Like they don't really have a true deep threat on this team. Like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison kind of do a little bit of everything. And Jefferson's the best receiver in the league. So we know he could do everything. But his skill set, he does his best work in that intermediate and the deep intermediate. And so if you can have a guy that can help take the top off a little bit more in Speedy and Jalen Naylor that way, that just helps the offense even more because Brandon Powell's kind of like I don't like to use the words one trick pony, but he's like a true slot. He's a slot receiver, right? Mm-hmm. So you're not really worried about him taking the top off of defense. You know what his skill set is. He's not really that good on the outside. He's more of that true slot receiver. Whereas if you have a Jalen Naylor, he could do a little bit of it all, and he's a little bit bigger than obviously a Powell. So that allows you to have 3 receivers in Addison, Jefferson, and Naylor. All 3 guys can do everything, and that's super important to be versatile. And so I'm excited to kind of see how they can all work together in that way. And that, again, like I said, to start, I was really critical of the receiver room behind the top 2 guys going into training camp. I'm pretty confident in what we've seen with Naylor, Tristan Jackson, and then you add Powell and Trent Sherfield to that group. That's a pretty good, well-rounded like top 6. And if they keep 5 or 6, we don't know, but that's a really good like group of 6 receivers for me. So I feel really confident going into the season.
I'm glad you mentioned Trent Sherfield because he's another one that I was like, wow, just the way that he's a run blocker in addition. Right. Like I really very, very impressed with that. I'm enjoying Trent. What else can you say about Trent, Miles?
Yeah, well, that and special teams. Like he's a big special teams guy, and that's always so important for depth players. If you can't get on the field with the starters and primary starters without injuries, special teams needs to be a big part of what you do. And Trent Sherfield's shown that that's a huge part of his game. And I feel like that's why the Vikings brought him in. They know that he could be a depth receiver. They know that they can trust him on offense a little bit and block. But they also know that they need with how kickoffs back, the kickoff rules back, where they're going to see a lot more kickoffs, the punt team, all the special teams. He's going to be able to be involved in those. And it's really important to have guys that are bought into those. I played a lot of special teams. That was especially when I played in college. Like special teams was like my niche. I was like, okay, if I'm going to get on the field, it's going to have to be more special teams. Like I'll be a rotational player, but I'm gonna have to do special teams. It's a mindset. You have to kind of go into it and be a little different. It has to be something that you're committed to. And it's clear that Trent Sherfield's committed to that role. And having those types of players on your team is so important, especially when they're on the bottom part of your roster. So I like Trent Sherfield. I'm probably getting a little bit too more geeked about him than I should.
I was gonna say, is he like you feel like bonded with him? Like that's my guy.
Yeah.
That's who I was as a player.
Yeah, that's my guy, right? Exactly. And like guys that can come in and have a role and know their role, but like they enjoy that part of their role of the team. They know how they can bring value to a team. I think that's so important, and I guarantee that's why the coaches love him. And so, yeah, I'm excited for him to be on the team for that reason. And he can also catch some passes. He's not a slouch. He's been across. He's been with the Dolphins, the 49ers, the Bills. He's played on some good offenses. So I'm excited for that entire room to kind of build out and see what they can do this year.
First off, I have a homework assignment for Myles. We need film of you running down on special teams.
Yes.
So please
Agreed.
get some of that. We'll play
that. Can I share something? It's not a safe space. It's not a safe space. I know it is. It's the internet. Nothing's safe. I played in college. I played against Adam Thielen in high school and college. It's no surprise to anybody that knows me.
Did you know he's from Minnesota too? That's crazy.
I didn't know.
Undrafted.
Yeah.
Undrafted too, I believe.
I had no clue. I had no idea. So that's good to know. No, so we're the same. Me and him are the same age. So I'm dating myself. But I was on punt. If you want, I don't know if I can find film. I hope I can't find this film. He was a punt returner. I was going down to tackle him, and he gave me the meanest stiff arm I've ever received. And that was not fun.
No.
So finding film. I had a few tackles here and there on kickoff and punt team, but so maybe I can find some film here. I had a few catches too, but nothing too crazy. But
it's beyond what Ross and I believed it. Ross, what would be your role on a professional football team if you were to be selected?
If I could,
yeah.
If I could just have a job, if they dedicated a roster spot to holder, that would be me on.
Don't do it, Ross. I'm telling you, it's harder than it looks.
No, I know it, and your hand will get mangled too. Okay, very quickly, I'm going to segue here to something that just boggles my mind, okay? You know this, Myles, and I'm not trying to degrade receivers, but receivers will have oopsies, right? Like a pass that they should catch, they easily drop. So seldomly do holders or punters ever drop the snap, and that always just boggles my mind. So to your point, you have to be really good at that because dropping an extra point, dropping a punt can cost you a game. It can cost you a playoff spot. It boggles my mind that when you watch these games, and again, they're specialists, so that's all they do is practice this. Does it boggle your mind as much as mine, Alex, that you don't see punters just drop snaps more or holders botch holds? Like, it happens, but you would think it would happen more based off of how often running backs, receivers, and tight ends just drop balls.
Who's Alex?
Oh my gosh, Myles. Sorry.
All good. I was like,
let me welcome.
Did you forget Jessi's name?
Yeah.
Or Myles' name? Which name did you forget?
Which one did we forget?
Myles.
I had to give you a hard time. I was like, maybe he's talking about Alex Trebek, and maybe we're going to like some weird Jeopardy thing. I don't really know.
That won't be the first time
that
I
came out so
make
smoothly
a
though,
mistake
too. Like
it did. Yeah, it was so smooth. No, to kind of answer your question, I think the difference for like a holder in this case is it's one quick snap. And so like that's literally all their job is. And so the concentration is focused on catching that football. Whereas like as a receiver, sometimes you're running a route. You might not always expect the ball to come. There's contact that happens. There's a lot of different things that go into running a route or a running back with the ball in their hands, fumbling or not catching the football out of the backfield. Lots of different things that happen on a play down, like every play basis. Whereas like a holder, you literally have, that's like you go in there for 15 seconds. That's your job. If you can't do that, you're not going to be on a team. So like, and it doesn't matter how good you can punt. Doesn't matter. Like you got to be able to do that as part of your job because they've made punters the holders now, right? Like that's a big part of it. So you better have some concentration to be able to do that consistently. And we talk about mangled hands, Ross. If anybody that's on YouTube, I have a pinky that got messed up in college. So it's one of those situations.
How do you fix that? Just
I would need to go in and get it.
Still?
They would need to go get it cut and like release the tendon, and it would need to re-heal. And it still hurts to this day, by the way. But I told myself, I was like, they told me how to miss like 4 months because I don't be able to use my hand, and I was like, I'm just gonna deal with it. Yeah. And then I just never got it fixed. My kids like to look at it and and they always grab it. Of course, like like little kids, they always grab the thing that hurts the most. And my daughter always grabs my pinky, and I'm like, please grab any other finger. But
Alex, I just did it again, Myles. I don't know why I'm doing that.
I don't even know an Alex on this programming. I don't know who it is.
I've met Myles a handful of times. Right. We've exchanged emails, text messages, and you know what? You're just Alex from now on. If I say Alex or Myles, respond. You and I have, I've actually been floated. I may need to have that same type of surgery where they release the tendon in one of my fingers, but it has nothing to do with football. But that's probably the only athletic thing you and I will ever share. Can I make one quick comment on the receivers very quickly before we segue to what else you have, Jess?
Yeah.
When you look at receivers 3, 4, and 5 or 3 through 6, for baseball fans, I kind of liken it to a Major League Baseball pitching rotation, right? Almost every team has their ace. Then maybe you follow it up with another ace or a really good number 2 for the Twins. The comparison would be like Pablo Lopez into Joe Ryan. Then everything else, most teams in Major League Baseball, you're just kind of trying to figure it out. Who do we trust? Who do we not trust? But when you look at like Jalen Naylor, he's your upside guy. Myles talked about it. It's never really been that he can't do it. It's that he hasn't been able to stay healthy to show it. So you just hope that he can stay healthy and show everybody what type of receiver he's capable of being of. Brandon Powell's that comfort guy. It will throw back to 7-8 years ago. Reminds me a bit of Jarius Wright. You know exactly what he is. You're going to throw him the ball more often than not. He's going to catch it, and it's going to be in a big spot. He's not really going to dazzle. He's not going to make a ton of people miss, but he's going to catch what's thrown to him, and you need those guys. And then you have the Tristan Jacksons of the world, and those, I think, are the guys maybe more of like the developmental guys where maybe you're hoping to keep them around because you don't want somebody else to get them, but you're probably not going to see a ton of them on game day, maybe in a few special packages. But if these guys can stay healthy, I'm with Myles. I think just because of what you have at the top with Addison, assuming that there's no suspension or anything else that we don't know about, at least at this point, and if Justin Jefferson can stay healthy, I think the Vikings, where they're at with receivers 3, 4, and 5, not a lot different from where most teams in the NFL are. The Vikings are just lucky that receivers 1 and 2 appear to be, or at least we know, they're pretty damn good.
Yeah. For the record, I've never been injured in sports because I'm the epitome of health, constantly elite athlete. And if I were on the NFL football team, I'd definitely be a running back because I'm just, that's who I am. Yeah.
I was thinking you might be the trash talking like linebacker that walks up to the line of scrimmage before
I could do
the
that
ball
too.
snaps.
I could do that too. Yeah. Or maybe a tight end. I could be a tight end. Yeah. Basically George Kittle in female form. Just so you guys know. Speaking, I would love to know what you guys think you would be on the rest of our viewers and listeners. Let us know what you think, comment, engage. We love that. As we mentioned, Vikings opening up the season against the New York Giants September 8th. The difference maker, Myles and Ross, what do you think the difference maker will be to get into the playoffs for the Minnesota Vikings? Now, I know everybody's kind of, do they need to make the playoffs? Does it really matter? And we hate the word tank. We know that across the Purple Daily channels, we are not using the word tank, but it isn't. It's not the worst thing if they don't make it. I'm going to start because I'm going to go with the easy softball. Sam Darnold needs to have a monster year in order for the Vikings to make the playoffs. If they make the playoffs, that's going to be the difference maker. He needs to not see ghosts, right? If you guys know what I'm talking about, he had mentioned that back in 2019, I think, that he was throwing. That's my concern with Sam Darnold is the incomplete pass. He can throw the ball, and we saw it during the one stint of preseason. He definitely has an arm, and he has the weapons, as we just discussed at length, for the receivers. I'm confident in the defense. So really, it's up to Sam Darnold. That's my difference maker. Myles, what's your difference maker? If the Vikings are going to make the playoffs, what has to be that key?
Well, I mean, since you took the softball,
I did. Out of the park with it too.
I'm gonna go with the running game, and not just because Aaron Jones. I'm a big Aaron Jones fan. I hated that he was with the Packers because I was always a big fan of his game. But I think you can no longer just rely on the quarterback's arm. And Kirk Cousins, you kind of been able to rely on him, kind of not carrying the offense, but he's always had Justin Jefferson. He's always had some really top tier receivers to throw to, and we knew that Kirk could be trusted with handling the football and not turning the ball over too much. And so that was always a big thing and put up big numbers and within the offense, and especially in the Kevin O'Connell offense, you could always kind of rely on that a little bit. And the run game's kind of been lacking the last 2 years since Kevin O'Connell's been head coach. Right. I think with Aaron Jones, I think with hopefully a revised run game a little bit and Aaron Jones's versatility, my hope is the run game can be a lot better, be more consistent. Hopefully we can see like 4 yards a pop, 4.5 yards a pop on, Aaron Jones. He's used to running, having big time runs and being very consistent. And so he's very explosive as well and really good in the pass game. My hope is that we can have more consistency in the run game so that there's easier situations on second and third downs. Because if you don't have Kirk Cousins to kind of bail you out in some of those situations. And I'm not even the biggest Kirk Cousins person, but like I knew the Kirk strengths, and Sam Darnold doesn't have those, not from a consistency standpoint. And so if you cannot have to rely on Sam Darnold as much in key situations because your run game has set you up in better situations, that's only going to make his life easier. And so my hope is that the run game can set themselves up and set up the rest of the offense a little bit better so that Sam Darnold doesn't have to carry that entire offense.
Well, in very draft-like form, since you guys took the first two best available takes, I will take what I believe is the best take still left on the board. That is the defensive line, boys. I'm still a little bit worried about this secondary, and the best way to cover up for a secondary that may just be average at best is to get home on the quarterback, get some pressure on the quarterback, but also stop the run. In the last few years, the Vikings haven't quite been the same team stopping the run that I think we all remember when things have been going well for them. So it's going to be stopping the run with the defensive line and getting after the quarterback. I think if Jonathan Grenard stays healthy like he did last year, you're obviously losing a bit by not having Danielle Hunter, but overall the room is still very good with the addition of Van Ginkel, and Dallas Turner looked good in camp and preseason. We would like to think that that's going to translate over to the regular season. I have every reason to believe that it will. So I think it's getting after the quarterback, causing that ball to come out a bit early, and also stopping the run game. So I think it's easy to say it's the secondary, but I think one thing you can do to help the secondary is to get pressure on that good old quarterback.
I agree. How much do you think Andrew Van Ginkel is going to help? I think there was a lot of excitement about that. Do we think he's going to play a large role, Myles?
Yeah, I think Brian Flores loves him. I think anytime you can get a guy that can do a little bit of everything within your defense, especially a D-line, off-ball linebacker, that type of role, I think Brian Flores is going to love him. Just like Mike Zimmer with any of his guys that he can move around. He's going to love that. And that versatility and him knowing the entire defense means that you can put them into more sub packages. You can move him. Maybe he'll play off-ball linebacker in certain situations, whether he comes off the edge and rushes the passer or drops into coverage. I think there's a little bit of that ability for him to do that because you have a Dallas Turner, Jonathan Grenard, and a few other guys that can really get home. I think that versatility is just like super important for this defense to go with like an Ivan Pace and Blake Cashman. So I'm excited to see how it can go. I'm curious to see how many snaps they all play with between him, Turner, and Grenard. But I wouldn't be surprised if they're all playing a lot of snaps together in a rotation period. So I'm excited.
Jessi, rate Van Ginkel's hair 1 to 10.
It's a solid 7. I mean, I dig the length. If we're going hockey flow, so actually my kid, the coach, he had his first flag football practice last week and took one look at him and he said, "You're going to be a quarterback because of that hair." So Van Ginkel has a very O-line or defensive player's length. I personally always like the hockey hair that's got the quarterback look to it a little bit. Can we talk about Joe Burrow's hair? No, never again. I don't like that. He ruined everything he had going for him. Done. Terrible. Bad hair.
I got to be honest. I've not seen the new Joe Burrow look. Have I missed something that's been just taking over the world?
It is awful.
Just Google Eminem blonde hair.
He dyed it blonde. Yes.
Oh no, that's what he did?
And it looks awful on because his hair was so good before. I think it's just it's a slap in the face to God, if you ask me. It's just mean. It's not like you're going to the playoffs. Like, and he just said he just wanted to do something different. I could go on for days about this, guys. I swear. We're gonna have to start rating Vikings walk-in looks too. That's kind of taken over the world. I think we're gonna have to do that this year.
All right, that's a bit we can think about adding. I don't necessarily disagree. Sports are meant to be fun. Let's have some fun with this.
Especially if the season goes off the rails, which sometimes it tends to do. But we will see. Speaking of bits, we are going to wrap up the first episode of season 3 of Before I Die, as we will every week with our Before I Dies.
And before I do that, Jessi, great time to remind everybody St. Thomas football is back for the 2024 season on 1500 ESPN and 1500ESPN.com. First up, the Tommies take on Sioux Falls this Thursday at O'Shaughnessy Stadium. I love saying O'Shaughnessy Stadium. That's about the closest I'll ever get to being Irish. O'Shaughnessy Stadium. Pregame at 5:30, kickoff at 6 on 1500 ESPN and 1500ESPN.com this Thursday night. College football is back. Woohoo!
Time now for the Before I Die crew to give us their Before I Dies.
For those of you new to the program, the Before I Dies are simple. It's something that we wish into fruition before we are deceased. As we had mentioned, the title name of this programming is Before I Die. We want to see the Vikings win a Super Bowl. That's a simple wish. Now, these can be completely off the wall. We've had everything from Chipotle to personal vendettas to sports related. Ross, would you like to kick off this week's Before I Dies?
Sure. I will start, and I'm going to put a very quick disclaimer here. For what we do, and I mean this industry, and in the state of Minnesota, I think if you can be, it is very logical and it's important to be at the Minnesota State Fair.
Fair.
As just a person going to the fair, I'm there for 20 seconds before I want to strangle almost everybody within sight of me. Okay, so before I die, there's going to be a code of conduct or rules at the State Fair, okay? If you're a slow walker, you can't be in the middle of a road. You act like you've been there before. They say
don't stop and don't just randomly stop. By the way, Rob.
Correct.
The worst people in the world.
If you stop, that's where I'm going, Jessi. If you stop, it needs to be on like the sidewalk or off to the side. We need designated lanes. This is the stroller lane. This is the 2 people or less lane. This is the slowest bleep lane. You know, we need that, and then we also need traffic control at intersections. We need. We have them outside the fair. We need to bring them inside the fairgrounds. Everybody's experience would be so much better if people just walked like they've been there before. That is my biggest complaint at the State Fair. That wasn't really even a Before I Die. That was more of just, I had to get that off my chest. I've already been out for twice.
Event session. That's what this is. This is a vent session.
It really is.
I'm going to be out there a handful of times, and I would just love it if we could all walk in an orderly fashion. And what would you say the percentage is, guys? 98% of people who have been to the State Fair have been there before?
Yeah. Yeah, there's never much new.
Yeah, 70% act like they've never been to the bleeping fair.
Yeah.
And there's with a purpose.
It's for me sometimes a little lack of consideration to your surroundings. Like there are people walking around, you've got kids. Like if you want to have those conversations, step to the side by one of those nice trees or the benches or any of the visiting common areas that are around. Otherwise, yeah, I just want to walk. I want to maneuver. Maybe I'm in a hurry to get to the bathroom because I've consumed too much O'Gara's. That has happened to me numerous times. I'm like, just get out of my way. The restrooms are on the other side of the fair. So I would agree with that, Ross. I think that's pretty solid.
Before I die, lanes at the State Fair. And if the fair is your thing, great. I don't begrudge you. Just walk with a purpose.
Can I say something? Safe space again.
Yeah,
I'm not the biggest fair person.
That's fair.
I've only been a couple times, and I'm born and raised in Minnesota. I've only been a couple times. We have yet to take so I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. Mm-hmm. We'll eventually take them. I don't know if this year's the year.
Do it while it's free. That's what I did with my kids. I'm like, they are free. You could sneak the 5-year-old in for the free.
Oh yeah, and he's a little guy. Like he's not the tallest.
Yeah, and they have a ton of free stuff for little kids too. Like so, I've taken my kids the past couple of years. We're going this week. And because they've learned, like, all right, they're happy with just like maybe a corn dog. Like they're not big into the foods. They're not huge into the rides yet. Like they maybe go on one ride, but they have like all of these little kid areas. Like there's the little Kemp's Dairy Farm Hands, and that's all free. And like tons of, so do it even better. It's even better.
You might be convincing me, Jet. That might be the first like convince I've been.
Yeah.
And especially with kids.
Save the ticket prices. Like everything I do with them, I'm like, there's probably too little to care, but I don't have to pay for them to be here. So this is great.
Here's the tip too for all fair goers. And I can say this, I know I just kind of ripped it, but I've worked over 10 fairs now. And some of them I've been out there every day. So I know, do your homework on when to go. If you can, the best days to go, even for you, Myles/Alex with your kids, is to go on this Tuesday or Wednesday. The only Tuesday or Wednesday of the fair tends to be the easiest day to navigate the fair and not stress us out and make us so angry. Because people will take off a Monday, they will take off a Friday, some will take off a Thursday. Not as many people will take off a day in the middle of the week. So the Tuesday and the Wednesday of the fair, are pretty good days to go. Now, I know I just gave that secret away to 50,000.
I was planning to take the kids tomorrow. So, Myles, if you want to bring on the kids, let's go.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
weekdays. I've always heard the weekdays is the way to go, and I would never go on a weekend. And ain't no way. I don't have the temperament for that. I'll get very frustrated with the rant you had, Ross. That will get me, and then it's just not enjoyable at that point.
I can't decide if I am a fair person or not. I think if you ask like my family, they'd say yes. But I mean, if I don't go, I'm not going to be mad. But I just like doing things. You know what I mean? Like I'm not a huge foodie person. I don't mind going to get the drinks. I don't mind going walking around, but it's not a must do, but it's also like, oh yeah, let's go to the fair, I guess. Back in the day in high school when I was walking around looking for guys, riding rides, like that was a big thing to do at night, right? Like you take the bus, let's be honest. That's just what you did. It was cheap, it was fun, whatever. Now with the kids, I'm like, I don't know. Because I'm not eating deep fried ranch. I don't like a lot of deep fried foods in general, especially in the middle of August when it's 100 degrees outside. Like, meh.
I always joke for one person going to the fair, Jessi, and then we can move on to what you guys got. I feel like I've hijacked this.
You did.
I always say one person going, you need to take out like a small loan to go to the state fair. I can't imagine you two with families, like what that's going to cost you over the course of the day. So, yes, to Jessi's point, always be looking for the free stuff, especially.
Anybody's looking to sponsor the Gorham family to the fair, let me know.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Brought to you by St. Thomas Athletics, 100 ESPN.
Myles, what do you got for your inaugural Before I Die?
Well, so this is my officially my first one. I don't have a good rant the way Ross does. I'll eventually get. I'm a ranting type person, so I'll get there. I would say for right now, my like before I die is I just want some stability at the cornerback position. I know we talk quarterback all the time. The quarterback one, yes, like please protect our young quarterback's knees. Like that's all I ask, but like it's too late for that. So all I ask is some stability at cornerback. It has been since 2017, 18 since we've seen like true stability at that position. And please, I'm just like asking for, even if it's just for 1 year for right now, but there's no, and the worst part is there's no long-term solution at the position anymore. So it's like, okay, all my hope is about this year. And so please just keep those guys healthy, keep them playing well. That's all I ask is stability at that position for at least a year, but I would love it for like year over year, but I'm just going to start with 2024.
Fair. I like
Once
that.
roads closed, turned to roads open. Things kind of changed around here at the cornerback position, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
They're rough.
Before I die, I'm gonna go kids, as I tend to do, because right now it's very kid heavy over here. Before I die, I'm gonna get the best of my middle child. And by that I mean he has been absolutely burning me nonstop with his quick wit, his sass. And I can't beat him. I can't beat him. He is 5 years old now. He is so quick to jump down my throat or say something like, if I'm getting dressed, he'll be like, "Oh, you look nice." And I was like, "Well, thank you." He's like, "Not as nice as you have looked, but you look nice." Like for no reason, just drive by burns all the time. Like just absolutely absurd. I'm going to get the best of him. Yeah, he's a wild card. That one is a wild card. That's for sure. He is something else, but it's just, his little mouth. It's hilarious. So before I die, I will get the best of him. Right now, he's up on me like 5-1. It's just ridiculous.
Have you ranked them, to call back to last year, have you ranked them recently like Dion ranks his kids?
Yeah,
Where are they
I
at?
will continue to rank my children and they will know publicly. It's a daily thing, but I'll maybe do it less. Maybe it's weekly now that school's starting. Currently, the oldest is number 1 because he's been very helpful around the house. My wild card, aka the middle child, he's always third. Maybe that's why I've created this monster because he's just always down at the bottom. But if he was maybe a little nicer, I give him credit for him. They're good. They're good little slices. Like I asked him to let the dog out the other day. I was like, "Can you go let your dog out?" He's not my dog. I didn't get him. Like, what are you talking about? It's clever though. I like it. So before I die, I'll get the best of the 5-year-old.
I love it.
I know.
Love it. Good stuff today, kiddos.
Good stuff, you guys. Thank you as always for checking us out. Don't forget to check out all the other Purple Daily content, as well as all of our other content on Score North, including Judd's Hockey Show, where you can see yours truly on Wednesdays. Plus, we've got Wolves, Wild, Twins. I think that's right. And Vikings. We're into the football season. Let's go, baby. We appreciate you all. As always, comment, rate, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. We will be back next week. Labor Day week. So it'll be maybe a little wonky to start, but otherwise we will be here every single Monday recapping your Vikings, making you feel good about the purple, at least for a little bit. Thanks for checking us out. We'll see you next week for another episode of Before I Die.
Love all of our viewers and listeners in where, Jessi?
Hennepin
Hennepin County.